This episode of 948 Division One is brought to you by Raw and Jim of Henderson. And Logan has been sponsoring a show here on the network, the old network and the new network, for the last 4 years now. And he makes this show possible, and we do appreciate that. They're located at 2101 Highway 64 in Henderson. You can give them a call, 903-987-5858. You can find them online at rawandjimhenderson.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Raw and Jim of Henderson. And we've talked before about how at Raw and Jim of Henderson, it's not just about working out. It's a family atmosphere that they want to know your goals, and then they're going to help you try to get to those goals and strive for them. And when you achieve them, they're going to celebrate with you. Also, Logan knows it's not just about working out. As he says, nutrition is just as important as exercise when it comes to achieving your fitness goals. Proper nutrition is essential for achieving strength and muscle gains. And he backs that up because now at the gym, you can buy prepackaged meals. They're healthy, they're easy, and also it's really easy to pay. You don't have to have cash. You walk in, you get the meal you want, and you cash app for it. So check out Raw and Jim of Henderson, again, located at 2101 Highway 64 in Henderson. 2 weeks left in the 948 Division One standings are taking shape. Or are they? Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Raw and Jim of Henderson 948 Division One show, where we're going to be talking all things 948 Division One. Hey, at least it's a fun district to talk about. You got Kilgore, Lindale, Chapel Hill, Athens, Palestine, Henderson, and Jacksonville, if you did not know. And we've got some great matchups. Just to let you know the standings as of now, Kilgore's atop at 5-0. They've already beat Lindale. They still got Chapel Hill to play. Lindale is 4-1. They've already lost to Kilgore and beat Chapel Hill. And then Chapel Hill's 3-1. They've lost to Lindale. We'll see what they do against Kilgore. And then you've got Athens, Palestine, Henderson, and Jacksonville basically battling it out for the third spot or the fourth spot. It's really going to come down to Athens and Palestine. So what we're going to do and every week going forward is talk 9-4A with NETSN Brett. Brett Sweeney will be joining me to just kind of recap each district game for this week and next week, preview the next week. And then, of course, we're going to be doing this show as long as the playoffs are going for any team in this district. We will have a show for that week. And I have a feeling we're going to have a couple, maybe 3 teams play for a while in 4A Division One. All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, it's Brett Sweeney joining me to talk 9-4A Division One right here on the Raw and Jim of Henderson District Show. Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe. Terry Bennett back here on the District 9-4A Division One show, brought to you by Raw and Jim of Henderson. We're now joined by NETSN Brett Sweeney of the Chapel Hill football broadcast, but he also does a ton of other basketball, volleyball, all that kind of fun stuff in the Northeast Texas area. But right now we're going to focus on 9-4A Division One. Pull back the curtain a little bit. We already started this conversation. Had some technical issues, had to restart. But let's start where we were, and we're going to start at the 4th place because right now that's the big battle. You know, I know Chapel Hill, Lindale, and Kilgore are all playing for positioning, but we'll get to those. Right now, I want to talk about winning you're in, losing you go home, and that's where it looks like we're headed for the last week of the season, Athens versus Palestine.
Yeah, it's looking like it. Athens, we talked about a while ago that they had the kind of the easier schedule early. They're going to end with Chapel Hill and Palestine, so most likely both teams are going to come into this game at 2-3. So basically, it is a play-in game. Basically, it's for 4th and 5th place. The game will be in Athens this year. And so, actually, no, it's going to be in Palestine. So, you know, you got to give the upper hand to Palestine a little bit. The home atmosphere is going to help them. They played really well there. I was there. They played against Chapel Hill, first district game for Chapel Hill, and Palestine only lost by 9. And they also hung with Lindale for the majority of the game there as well. So, I would expect Palestine to play well. The main thing with Palestine, I haven't seen Athens yet, but I know with Palestine, they need to be in the game or in the lead. They don't play well having to come from behind. They do a great job of keeping the ball in the offense's hands and, you know, having long drives, keeping the other team's offense off the field. But if they have to throw, other than the play action throws that work well for them, if they have to line back up there and throw, like spread the ball out and throw it around, that's not what they want to do. So if you're Athens, you're going to want to get off to a good start and get a lead and force Palestine to get out of their original game plan.
Now, I do want to point out, I know you say I'm crazy, but Henderson still has a legitimate chance. They play Palestine this week, and if they were to beat the Wildcats, that would throw everything into just a really complete tizzy. And Henderson on the year, of course. Chapel Hill destroyed them. Kilgore beat them, but they hung with Athens. That was a 3-point game, and honestly, it kind of felt if maybe Henderson wins that game, we have a completely different outlook on what they're going to do. But I do want to point out they legitimately still have a chance.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Henderson's got, they've got Palestine and Jacksonville remaining. So Jacksonville's had a tough time this season. So
Are you surprised by that? Like, I really thought when the realignment hit, Grant and I on our realignment show, I talked about them in Sulphur Springs, and I said, look for either one or both of those teams to drop down and immediately become good. Sulphur Springs has done that. In fact, Sulphur Springs might be a dark horse on that side of the bracket in their area. Jacksonville, though, last year 3-7, this year 0-8. I will admit, I'm absolutely shocked by that.
I'm a little surprised at the 0-8. Coach Holman's a great coach. He was on the staff on the state championship team over here in Chapel Hill.
Yep.
And then he went to Lufkin and was the defensive coordinator down there. But he's got a tough time. I mean, they had some injury problems over there a little bit, so they've had the things to deal with. But I thought they would be one of the teams competing for that 4th spot preseason. I really thought that they would take a step forward, but it just hasn't been the case. They haven't been able to get over the hump. I mean, you look at what they've done this year on their schedule. I mean, they did play Sulphur Springs, like you mentioned. They lost to them
quite a while.
They were ahead in that game. And I believe had some guys get hurt there, and that's some of the problems. They had some guys get hurt. Sulphur Springs kind of came back on and won. Lost to White House. We know White House is a really good team.
Yeah.
Pine Tree, another 5A school, but Pine Tree's improved this season. Then when they got the district play and they lost to Athens that first game, that's when I kind of was like, oh, that's not good. That's one of those games that before the season started, I thought they would win. Athens was the bottom of the district last year. So, I'm just really shocked by that. I really am. I'm looking at that Henderson, though. I saw them play last week. I don't know what happened. The quarterback didn't play. They had their backup played. So there might have been some issues there. So if they get their quarterback back, maybe they can compete and throw a wrench in all this. But as of right now, from what I've seen, Palestine is definitely the best team out of the top 3 to me. We'll see Athens this week, but I think that they're having that game in Palestine is going to be a big difference.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, Athens, they take on Chapel Hill this week. As we talked about in the first recording of this, they took it to Kilgore on the road, 28-21. The fact that it was a close game is surprising, but also for me, the fact that they held Kilgore to 28 points might be even more surprising. This could be an interesting game in that, you've got Athens now with a lot of confidence coming into this. Their coach is saying, hey, you know what? If we beat Chapel Hill, we don't even have to worry about Palestine in that last round. We can worry about positioning at that point. Mm-hmm. I do think this is going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that Chapel Hill, coming off that Lindale game, I think some eyes were opened. Maybe some things that the players didn't see. I'm sure the coaches, it's hard to talk to 16, 17-year-old kids when they think they're invincible. You lose a game like that. It happened 2 years ago. They lost in Lindale 2 years ago, kind of went on a little run there. Made it to the 4th round of the playoffs. So, I think that they've got a chance to really do something. I was impressed by the difference in the teams from Lindale game versus the Henderson game. Now, Henderson's not as good a team as Lindale.
Yeah.
But, they came out and made a statement. It was 56-3 when the starters were pulled. So some of those other points were, those – and that's one thing that Coach Reardon's very, very good about. When he pulls back and not going to risk someone getting injured. So some of the scores I know we talk about the defense and the points they've given up, but there's been a lot of those games that legitimately they've pulled guys out and given up 2 or 3 trash touchdowns there. So I think the defense is better than what sometimes we give them credit for because they don't play a lot of 4-quarter games in a lot of these. So um, I think that it's going to be interesting how they come off of this one. Are they still going to be motivated and still going to be hungry? I think they will. I think they're going to handle Athens. I wouldn't say easily, but I don't think it's going to be as a big a challenge as the Palestine game. I think they're going to come out now that they've kind of refocused. The coach maybe has their attention now, and they're going to handle them pretty well. Of course, Coach Harrell's a great coach down there in Athens. And I know he'll have them ready too.
Well, and what you talked about, I think, makes a valid point about what Palestine can do so well is they play keep away, and Athens has a really good number of athletes, but their style kind of fits into Chapel Hill's. Where okay, you want to get in a track meet, we'll get in a track meet. For the Bulldogs, you and I've talked about it before, on the air, off the air. It's just simply keeping your head clear and playing clean football, and maybe losing that Lindale game might be the best thing that happens to them going forward, because that reminds them that, hey, if you don't play clean football against a solid to good opponent, you can be beat.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really says to Coach Cochran and their game plan that they had at Lindale for that one. I mean, they had what they wanted to do was they wanted to control the clock, keep the ball in their offense's hands for as long as they could, and keep Brisbane and Stewart off the field.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And then when Chapel Hill did have the ball, mistakes were made. You had some fumbles, turnovers, and let Lindale have short fields, made it really tough for them to come back. And then they kind of make a comeback there late in the game, but just ran out of time. But man, hats off to Lindale. I mean, that's what you have to do to win a game like that. You have to have a solid game plan. You have to execute it, and then you have to have things go your way. And all three of those things happened, and they were able to get that win. Now, what will Lindale do with it? I mean, we'll see. I think they're not going to be able to do that going forward too far in the playoffs. They're going to have to. Thurman, I mean, he had 300 plus yards in that game. I mean,
Yeah, running.
And they had their tailback Parker, I believe, is out now, so they're going to have to find somebody else to help shoulder the load, because the poor guy can't carry the ball 40 plus times a game. I mean,
I mean, we say that, but they literally went to a state championship game on the legs of one guy for the most part.
Yeah, it was a little bit different dynamic, though.
Yeah, I agree there. I agree.
I mean, he's running up the middle and just getting pounded. Like, that's not it's a little bit different. When you're running basically a quarterback run almost every play, I mean, he's taking some hits from some big guys up there. And so, as well as Thurman's played, at some point, I mean, you got to have somebody else that can take some of those hits.
Well, one of the things I think that Cochran does well at Lindale, though, is attack defenses' weaknesses. So you might see a game like against Chapel Hill where they're like, okay, we can get them guard to guard and we can use that. And then against another team, it's, hey, we're going to hit the edges. And I think that's one of the things that Cochran doesn't get enough credit for, is that and his staff, I don't mean just him, is their ability to kind of find the defensive weaknesses, because we're talking about a Lindale team that offensively now, this is what they do. They either outscore or get outscored, but they're usually going to put up a lot of points. That's why I was a little shocked by that Kilgore game. I mean, I know it's in today's football, 29 points isn't a ton of points. I was surprised that Kilgore, let's talk about Kilgore. They, to me, are the most confusing team still, even though they're 8-1, 5-0 in district. The way they've lost in one games is confusing. They gave up 30 to Carthage. They hold Gilmer to 23, and then into district play, that offense is really starting to churn. And so is that defense, but is it because of who they played outside of Lindale?
Yeah, but then you look at Athens last week, and they only scored 28.
But they held Athens to 21. So I mean, that, to me, I don't know.
It's weird. They've won different ways.
And that's one of those things that'll help them going forward for sure.
Yeah. And so you don't really know how good is their offense. It's hard to, I mean, they haven't really put up any big numbers against opponents that I would consider
good defenses.
Good defenses. I mean, they put up 46 on Henderson. We know Henderson's defense is not that great. Lindale's defense it's been kind of a roller coaster season for them. They have improved if you look, and that's one of the things that I
Yeah.
noticed. Like early in the season, Lindale's given up 46, 42, 42, 59, and then they hit district play and they give up 7 to Henderson, 7 to Athens. The Kilgore one's kind of the outlier, but then they only give up 23 to Chapel Hill. But then last week they give up 49 to Palestine. So it's kind of like that's kind of a hodgepodge there. How good is Lindale's defense? Is it just maybe the matchup is not as good? I don't know. I know it's improved. To me, I thought coming in that was going to be their weakness, but I've been impressed with Lindale's defense so far. It's just kind of confusing. It's
Well, and I'd like to know if that Palestine game, if that was one of those where Lindale got out early and then just kind of throttled back. And
well, I was following it. It was back and forth.
was it?
Yeah, it was, and I figured this game would be like a 2-hour game with the way the teams play.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
It'd be a fast game because not a lot of throwing, a lot of running, and not anything big play wise. It's going to be 4 or 5 yards here, 4 or 5 yards there, and so yeah, I was surprised by the score. I mean, I thought it'd be more like a 35-28 game or something, just because there wouldn't be enough time to score that many points.
Well, and then it goes back to, we talk about Palestine, they're going to grind you down, and then I go back to, well, why didn't Chapel Hill do that? But as you said, Chapel Hill got behind the 8 ball really quick with turnovers, bad field position and stuff. But it just felt like they kind of maybe left some points on the ground against Lindale. But again, give Lindale credit, man. The game plan, I was watching some of the highlights from that. The game plan they did, I know it's really simple, but Chapel Hill could never figure it out.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's a negative about scoring quickly, Terry, is like you get your defense right back out there. So I think that had a big difference in this game too. Lindale goes down. They have Chapel Hill's defense on the field for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and then Chapel Hill's offense, if they go back out there in their quick strike, the defense turns around and has to get right back on the field. And so between that and then the turnovers, I would be interested to see what the time of possession was. I would gather to say it was probably pretty lopsided. And if you have your defense out there that long, even if you're a solid defense, they're eventually going to get tired.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a perfect game plan. I kind of want to talk about. So now you've got an interesting setup here.
All right.
The top 3 spots. Okay, so you've got Kilgore 5-0, Lindale 4-1, Chapel Hill 3-1.
Yep.
They see Lindale is at the district point differential is you can only get 15 in the district. So Kilgore is at max. They're at 15 plus 15. Lindale is at -3 because they won by 12 and lost by a lot, which is only get 15. So right now, Chapel Hill is at -12. So they would need to beat Kilgore and win by what, 7 or about a touchdown?
Yeah, I think.
Let's see.
Is that right?
No, that'd be more than that because they're negative. So let's see. So 27-point differential right now between. So it'd be 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
So they would need to win by 2 touchdowns, and that would put them at number 1. And then Kilgore would be, if they won by 2 touchdowns, Kilgore would still be positive. So that's going to be an interesting shakeout because you're going to be looking at scoreboard. If you're Lindale, you got to take care of your games.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's going to be a point differential thing if Chapel Hill wins. Now, if Chapel Hill loses, then they'll be 3rd, Kilgore will be 1st, and Lindale will be 2nd. I don't know that looking at the matchups, I don't know how much it matters. It's going to matter more on the bracket itself. I don't know, with a first-round game may not, but it's where you are on the bracket.
I do think you don't want to play Lumberton. I think Lumberton's heating up. They have a really good.
They struggled early, surprisingly. They had some injuries.
Well, I one of the guys on Smokey, let me see what his name is, just in case he finds that listens. I always like to shout out people that give us information. He directed me to it was Raider 20 from Smokey. He directed me to an interview that Coach Ray's did. Coach Ray's graduated in Marshall. He's not from Marshall. His dad was a coach. But he ended up his last 3 years, I think it was, right after me. But he talked about that young offensive line, young secondary. They were, completely rebuilding everything basically but Lucas Powell, and they've started to heat up. I still love the fact, I think their statistical anomaly of losing their first 3 games 35-20, 35-20, and 34-20 is more fascinating than anything else. But as far as that district, that's the team you want to avoid in the first round. LCM is really solid, don't get me wrong, but I don't think LCM is going to scare anybody, any of the top 3. But Lumberton, you want to avoid them. And they play this week actually for the district championship, and so we'll see how that falls.
Is it really more that you want to avoid your own district here if you're Kilgore, Lindale, and Chapel Hill? If you want the 1 seed so you don't have to play the other 2 guys possibly later?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a benefit. You always want to push. People don't understand this. You always want to push the toughest game to the last possible game. That's just how it works. The more you advance, the better the wins are and all that. And so if you get a choice, you're going to take it in order of least to toughest and play the toughest at the end. And you do make a valid point. As far as who do you want to play now compared to who do you want to play, in round 4 or round 3? And you want to avoid, because the second and third will play in round 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It's really weird how it is, because it's really weird that Pleasant Grove and Carthage are going to end up playing each other in round 3 too, though.
It's just because of the district alignments.
Yeah, just because of the district lineup and how it all falls. All right, so let's talk about this week's games. We're not going to just give our picks. We're not going to go deep in them. This is kind of the off week outside of 2 games. You got Lindale versus Jacksonville. I think Lindale rolls.
Yeah, Lindale, easy.
And then let's start with Palestine versus Henderson. I think Palestine's a favorite, but I do think this is a game, if you don't watch out, I think Henderson has showed, flashes that Athens games comes back. But to me, I'm like you, when you're playing the Wildcats, can you stop the run? And can you keep them from keeping the ball away from you? And I don't know if Henderson could do that. I could see this game being close, but Palestine kind of grinding them down in the second half.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen from both teams, I think Palestine is the better team right now. The game is in Henderson, so that it's always.
I think that matters.
It does. I mean, they really have a nice facility, by the way. Henderson Stadium we taught Taj Mahal of the stadiums in our district. It's probably the nicest.
Henderson's doing a lot of right things. It's just going to take a while.
Yeah, it really is. And they had some good moments out there. And, when I heard they were playing their backup quarterback, that can make a difference. I mean, you have to put in someone that hasn't taken but a few snaps all season and put them in. But I think Palestine is going to take this one. I think, Henderson maybe stays in it for the first half, and then Palestine kind of pulls away in the second.
All right. Does Athens upset Chapel Hill?
I don't think so.
Homer.
Hey, I'm going to go with who I pick. If I thought they were going to lose, I'd tell you. I just don't think so. I think lesson learned in the Lindale game. I think Chapel Hill is going to pick up where they left off.
Yeah,
I mean, they absolutely dominated all facets of the game last week. You had a punt return touchdown from Javen Mayfield, kickoff return touchdown from Javen Mayfield, and he also had 2 receiving touchdowns. He was actually up for the one of the players of the week in Dave Campbell's this week. And Stewart and Brisbane didn't have to do a whole lot. I mean, it was a team performance. You could tell they were focused, and I think they bring that into Athens, and they take care of Athens. I'm going to say Chapel Hill wins by 2 touchdowns at least.
All right, and where is all NETSN going to be this weekend?
So we'll have the center guys will be in Bullard for the center Bullard game. Mm-hmm. And then I'll actually be traveling to Houston to cover Brook Hill, our TAP school here in Tyler, or actually Bullard. And they're going to be playing the Villages in Houston. That game will be a 6:00 kickoff on NSN. And then Keith and Christian and those guys will be down in Athens for the Chapel Hill and Athens game on Friday night.
I do want to thank Brett for joining us here on this 9-4A Division I show. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, email them to me, terry@s2ssport.com. Preferably be 9-4A Division I, but it can be anything 4A Division I, or you can just hear our state show that Grant Goodwin and I do each and every week called Sideline to Sideline. We have a 4A edition, a 3A edition, and a 2A edition each and every week, brought to you by SI Design and Printing. So, week 10, we'll start to either straighten the table out or scatter the table even more. That Athens Chapel Hill game, that right there is your decider. I still think, though, watch out for Henderson versus Palestine. I still think that could be an trap game. But for everything else, I Palestine still should win that game. And then if Chapel Hill wins against Athens, it all comes down to Athens and Palestine for that last spot. But again, if Henderson upsets Palestine or Athens upset Chapel Hill or both happen, then things get all in a fun frenzy. Until then, I'm Terry Bennett, and this has been the District 9 4A Division I show brought to you by Rar and Jim of Henderson on S2S Sports, part of L4 Media.